Good morning. Hope you guys are having a great Tuesday. There will be more posted after I've had class and can give some examples in class. Just hard to find the time to teach class 3 times a day, including the recording. So try to give you a little bit. Also, chances are I'm going to need more than 15 minutes because there's some pretty heavy-duty math in this lesson. All right, so we're going to start talking about the actual cost of credit. So we know that credit means we're using someone else's money for something now and paying later. So you have different options that might come up. You might have, you're buying a computer, you could make payments for 24 months or 36 months. You could choose. Now, depending on how the interest is figured, you're probably going to pay more if you spread that out longer because you're using their money longer. You might say, well, it's still a lower payment, that's what I want. Just know you're paying more for that item in that case. 13.5 or 18% interest. Hopefully we all know that the lower interest would be the better deal if everything else is held equal. So a car, do you take a lower price but a little bit higher interest rate, or just pay a higher price? Well, it's going to depend, right? It's going to depend on how long you're going to keep that money and how much higher that interest rate is. So really need to weigh those options specifically. There's no one completely right answer there. And then a TV, it's good to delay your payments for 90 days. Could be if at the end of the 90 days you could just pay things off. Or sometimes when it's in 90 days, oh, no payments for 90 days, but the interest actually starts on day 1. So then it's probably really not a good idea because you're paying more interest. 90 days same as cash means no interest. So then if you pay it off in 90 days, you're not paying any interest. But when they say no payments for 90 days, that doesn't necessarily mean there's no interest. Also, if at the end of those 90 days you can't pay it, even if it says same as cash, 90 days same as cash, at the end of that time, if you can't pay, most of the time they're going to back the interest up all the way to day 1. So only take advantage of those offers if you know, well, I really have the money now, but I'll use their money for free for a little while. All right? And then, do you take the $1,500 cash back or no cash back? Well, usually that's not as simple as that. If that was the only difference, of course we'd take the cash back. But usually there's a trade-off, the interest rate is higher if I take the cash back. So you have to weigh it to see which way would you be coming out with the best deal. So we're going to look at some things about how credit's used, a little bit of review from yesterday. What are the typical cost of credits, and how in the world do I figure this out, right? So those things are going to help you learn what you might need to know to make a decision in certain borrowing situations, like some of the situations we just talked about. So when you're buying on credit, you're making that purchase now, promising I'm going to repay it later, maybe in payments, maybe in a lump sum. The principal, that's the cost of the item you've purchased or the amount of money that you've borrowed. We also use that word if we have a certain amount of money that we invest, we put into a savings account. We may also, when we're talking about interest, refer to that as principal. It's kind of the starting value. And then interest, and that's usually given as a percent. It is given as a percent. And typically expressed in an annual percentage rate. So here's an example. Mariah's mom borrowed $10,000, so that's the principal, to buy a used car on credit. At the end of 3 years, she repaid the $10,000 that was borrowed, plus 3.5% interest for a total of $10,549. So to get that $10,549, they've taken 10,000 times 0.035, so I changed the percent to just a decimal by moving it 2 places to the left, times 3 for 3 years. That's where the 549 comes from. That's her interest. And then we add it back on to the 10,000. Now, in this case, apparently if she's just paying at the end of the 3 years, it's just a lump sum as opposed to like having a car payment, which is a little unusual. All right, so if Jesse's brother had a flat tire in his car, but he didn't have the money to buy a new tire that day, but gotta do something, right? So he was able to purchase a new tire by the $150 for the tire plus 10% interest in 30 days. So will he end up paying more or less than $150 for the tire? I hope you said more. How could he have avoided paying more than the cost of the tire? Maybe that emergency fund? If he had an emergency fund, then he'd have some money to set aside for situations like this. Maybe if he had a credit card and he did not carry a balance on it so that he could use it just for emergencies and then be able to pay it off when the bill came and then not pay any interest. But that only works if he's not carrying a balance. So in this case, his interest was not very much because it was only for 1 month. His interest would have only been $1.25 because that's simple interest, which is just the principal times the interest rate. So PRT, principal times rate times time. That interest rate is expressed for an APR, an annual percentage rate. So 10% becomes 0.10, and it's only 1 month, so it's only 1/12 of the year, because the 10% is for the whole year. Okay, so this only ends up meaning he's paying $1.25 in interest. I think we probably all agree in that situation, not a bad deal. Chances are they may charge you some extra fees. The $150 for the tire might have been a little expensive, but he's buying good tires, I guess. I'm sure it includes being balanced and put on. Now, if we're doing monthly payments, yeah, this is a big honkin' formula. All right, this is an amortization formula, and it's showing the payment is what you get. So the A is the payment amount, the amount of payment, I guess. I'd rather they worded it that way. Principal is how much you're borrowing. Those R's are the interest rates. And the N is the total number of payment periods. The interest rate is also per period. So if you're paying monthly, that interest rate actually gets divided by 12 so that they're figuring out how much it would be each month. And then, like if it was 4 years, there would actually be 48 time periods. So my other video is going to be going into some specifics of how to use this formula. Also, we're going to look at Google Sheets and how you can put it in Google Sheets to let Google Sheets do the work for you. So powerful. Spreadsheets are wonderful. So we're going to learn that. So in your little booklet, you'll see they asked about, let's see, on page 9, they talked about if a friend offers you $100, but you have to pay him back $120, would you say yes? Okay. So if you're paying him back $120 in 6 months, like all at once, that would actually be 40% interest. Because it's only half a year, it's 20%, but it's only half a year. So you would be paying 40% interest. So yeah, those payday loan places, crazy amount of interest because you're just keeping the money for a short time. But they call it service fees and stuff instead. So that's how they get by with that. Because there actually are laws against charging usurious rates of interest. That means like ridiculous. All right, so if instead we were going to have the $100 paid off in 6 equal payments, and we use that amortization formula, then we would come up with each payment being $18.66. And then notice that at the beginning, a lot of the payment is going to interest. This is only for 6 months, so it doesn't turn out to be a crazy amount at the beginning that's going to interest. It's very depressing to look at one of these for, say, a home loan, because at the beginning, very little of the money is going to the principal. Much more is going to interest. And then you see that at the end, they actually end up paying $111.96. And then, so the interest that was paid was $11.96. Not $20, but that was with payments, not all at once. So APR, I've already mentioned, that's our annual percentage rate. So that's the consistent way that we report interest. And that's why we divide by how many periods in a year if we're trying to find out that when we're doing the amortization. And then maturity date, when the final payment is due. Grace period, that's things has to do with your credit cards. And then these are our credit options. So different kinds of credit options. We've seen revolving credit. Those are our credit cards. Installment credit, like a car loan where you have a payment. Cash loan where you just pay it all off at once at a certain time. And then service credit, like for your utility bills. We talked about all these things yesterday. So hopefully if you either were in class or watched yesterday's presentation, you're good with that. You can also pause this so you can take a better look. Hello, hello. We'll pick up there on the next video.